All righty. It is 9:30, everybody. We are going to get started with our Excelling in the Workplace, a Gen Connect webinar. Basically, we'll have a panelist of four of our members of Gen Connect who are also young and up-and-coming professionals and business owners and managers in the Frederick community. And we'll be asking them a little bit about, what did they have to do to pivot during the pandemic and this past year that we've been going through. I thank you everyone for joining us, and let's get started. The first panelist we'll be working with is Jasmine Browder of Girls on the Run of Mid-Maryland and Frederick County. Jasmine, why don't you give us a brief overview of Girls on the Run and your responsibilities there?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Jasmine Browder. I'm the Regional Program Coordinator for Girls on the Run of Mid and Western Maryland. We are a local nonprofit that seeks to inspire girls in 3rd through 8th grade to be joyful, healthy, and confident, using an evidence-based curriculum and integrating running, hence Girls on the Run. A little bit of what I do at Girls on the Run is manage the overall program, so compliance, site management, budgeting, all that jazz. And then I also do the marketing and outreach for the entire organization as well.
Wow, excellent. A lot of hats there. So let's get started. I mean, obviously COVID-19 changed the way that we do business, pretty much everywhere in every aspect of life. So how has the COVID-19 pandemic changed how you handle your day-to-day responsibilities at Girls on the Run?
So right now I'm virtual or I'm remote. So we are working from home, all of us. That has sort of changed a little bit. But the biggest day-to-day change would probably be the compliance with COVID. That is just like a new hat that I'm wearing in terms of keeping up with each of our county's health department guidelines, with our own go-to-eye policies, and then also with the state. So that's sort of a new day-to-day thing for responsibility for me that wasn't really pre-pandemic. So that compliance part is fairly new.
Excellent. And then, so obviously a lot of changes had to be made, and compliance being a big one. How quickly was your team able to adapt to the new guidelines, and what would you say was the biggest hurdle to overcome in managing those guidelines?
I'm gonna just look at my notes. Okay. So we were really thankful for Go2Rise leadership. So Go2Rise is our like parent company, if you will, and they helped us transition a lot. They gave us a lot of guidelines and already existing. So they kind of dreamed up a lot for us, so we didn't have to do too much in terms of transitioning. But as for remote working, our organization here in Maryland was kind of already pre-pandemic, sort of working to gear towards that. I was already able to work from home on Mondays pre-pandemic. They gave me an internet and phone stipend. And I know that like some people don't, they're paying for their own internet, their own computer, all that. But my organization was very supportive in supplying all of those things to make it very successful from working from home. And then also to just trying to figure out and balance the communication. We just have a lot of softwares that are again given to us by Go2Rise that again help us really transition to all of this. So where it was challenging at the beginning in terms of figuring out like what our new working hours were, we were very thankful for that leadership that was given to us.
Wow, yeah, technology has definitely been a huge, hurdle for, I think, a lot of businesses, especially smaller businesses in the community. So Girls on the Run, you typically have lesson plans and programs provided. So how has Girls on the Run as an organization adapted to deliver lesson plans and program guidance to its participating members?
Oh gosh, so we've definitely shifted. Spring 2020, we normally are after school and typically an after-school program. So we were like at almost every Frederick County elementary school and very few middle school teams. And when schools closed, we just completely had to shut all of that down because we didn't have access. We went full virtual, and that didn't go as well. We didn't have as much interest in our virtual program. but thankfully we took the time during the summer we canceled camp, took time to summer just to reposition ourselves. We came back and just sort of, we are this very flexible programming is kind of where we positioned ourselves. Instead of just our traditional 2 times a week in person for our elementary and middle school teams, we expanded to a weekend program. And then we did go ahead and keep our virtual program. It's not as big, but there is some interest for that. So we did sort of had to be flexible with our programming and make sure that we were giving a wide range of options for our families and our girls, because we do service a lot of Title I areas. So we want to be able to reach them in multitude of ways. So yeah, that's kind of how we transitioned. And I don't think I answered a question before about what was our biggest hurdle, but this kind of ties into this, and that is recruiting our volunteers. You know, trying to find volunteers who were interested in our virtual program was just, everyone sort of virtualed out a little bit. So they were just not interested in that. And then also too, just around that safety issue, we had a lot of teachers who are our coaches before, but they're like super, you know, have their plate full. So we had to expand our volunteer outreach. So that has been a challenge with trying to shift from either to a virtual program or our in-person or sort of flex where they can shift to virtual if needed. And sometimes that can make volunteers shy away because of how, you know, it's like, I don't want that virtual person. So yeah, that's sort of where we've shifted.
Have you made any changes in how you maybe seek out volunteers based on, you know, the changes that you guys have had to make?
Oh yeah, so we've gotten in contact with a lot of our community colleges, and also we've been doing a lot of virtual service fairs and just try to networking that way. We've tried to reach out to more of our parents, which that was our biggest volunteer group last season in the fall. It was just a majority of parents who were like, I want my girl outside activity, you know, she's constantly on the computer and I also want activity as well, so I'm gonna like spearhead this. So we've looked toward our parents and our guardians, and also too, we've looked more toward community members. So I really put myself in different sort of virtual groups to sort of see if I can recruit that way as well. So it has been difficult.
It seems like you're adjusting well and, you know, using the strategies in front of you. So I guess we hear a lot on the news of the new normal and possibly, you know, a lot of people pushing towards remote work. Do you think any of the changes that were made in your organization will become permanent even as we move away from the pandemic?
I do believe so, especially with being able to telework. Just the nature of our job, we're kind of always on the go already. So like I said, we were kind of given, you know, the internet stipend, that phone stipend, so I can have the hotspot wherever I go, to make sure that I can, you know, wherever I am, I can access what I need. So I do believe that it'll only just strengthen afterwards. And I'm totally fine with it because I do like working from home. There are some challenges, but I think part of that challenge was how quickly the teleworking came on. It wasn't like an easy transition. It wasn't, you know, there wasn't much training that was, you know, happens for most people. So I think personally for our organization, we'll probably keep with the teleworking. So I'm hoping that stays. And then one of the biggest things that came out of positioning with CDC guidelines was a journal for our girls. And it was one of that moment where why hadn't this had come up before? Because it was a really useful tool in the fall.
Excellent. Yeah, that sounds incredible. So I guess we all, you know, focus on kind of the, you know, the worst aspects of COVID and what it's brought to us. But if any, what are some positives that you have taken away in light of the situation that we're in?
You know, even though we don't have as many volunteers, I've still noticed that there is that need to serve. And that has been, I've been really grateful for those who have just kind of stepped up. We've had, you know, people who've just kind of been on our donor list who have stepped up and said, I want to be, you know, I want to help a little bit more. And so that's been sort of a positive to come out of this, is just seeing the different types of volunteers that we wouldn't normally have gotten. And also to the feedback that we got from our fall season, we were really worried about how it was gonna go. We were really just like, kind of like, all right, we kind of went in there and we were going to work with it. But the feedback that came afterwards about some of our girls using their positive self-talk, and that just really was a positive for us. And so yeah.
That's great to hear. And Jasmine, thank you for your time today. And anybody tuning in, if you're looking for a volunteer opportunity,
Yes.
Sounds like Jasmine might have something there for you. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
All righty. We will be moving on to our next panelist, who is Molly Fraley with Spherion Staffing Group. She's a wonderful member of the Gen Connect committee. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and your responsibilities at Spherion?
Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Halfway through the week, we made it. So I am the Director of Training and Development for Spherion Staffing, and then also manage their Frederick branch directly for staffing. As far as training and development, I'm actually responsible for training all of their internal recruiting team members, not only in how you interview and how you engage with people looking for work, but also on the clientele side. The other thing that I do is I support a lot of the staffing for Frederick specifically. So a lot of client relations. What I love about that is I am a born and raised Frederictonian. I left short term and this is home, so it is what it is. So I definitely came back. So it's a great way to kind of connect to my community and come across people that may have been a brother, mother, sister, friend of somebody I graduated elementary school with. And I love that. But we're a full service staffing team in the area, from entry level second chance companies to CEOs, HR managers, the whole kit-caboodle.
Wow, excellent. A lot on your plate, and I'm sure it got a little bigger on once the pandemic hit. And employment has been a major topic of in the news lately with records of unemployment. How has that shaped and how has that affected the staffing and recruiting industry?
No doubt, job displacement has been top 3 topics of 2020, no doubt. But the staffing industry has thrived. And I know that that is a horrible thing to say, but at the same time, I think a lot of the reasoning behind that is the uncertainty that other companies are in. Being with a staffing or recruiting team, having the opportunity to hire 40 people because I had this big project come in, but less of a risk attached to if we drop again, then I'm not in a bad space because I just hired 50, 40 people in that space. So that's really nice as well, to be able to extend the contract, hire a contract, kind of move forward from there as well. Over the last 9 years that I've been here, I will tell you that August of last year to today is the busiest that it's been in the last 7 years. Companies are adjusting, companies are changing. There are a lot of industries outside of the staffing industry that skyrocketed because of things during the pandemic. So that's something that's very different as well. To speak to kind of what Jasmine had said about an additional task that's kind of come onto her play, is now she's responsible for all that COVID compliance. A lot of our HR managers that we work with at other companies are at home, or have also taken on this task of now doing compliance for COVID. So the filtering through the 300 resumes that came through their online portal is the last thing on their list, even though that they need them. So they're trying to keep their current staff safe while at the same time trying to keep business moving and get new staff in the door. So that's a real reason why our industry became chaos, that it is keeping that pipeline and maintaining that pipeline, but also the flexibility of there could be a drop, there could be a change, there could be a part-time, there could be a whatever the case may be.
All right. And so you mentioned you're in a management position there. You manage the entire Frederick office, and obviously have some say in dealing and training with the recruits. So as a manager, how has COVID-19 pandemic affected how you interact and strategize with your team?
Good question. So always changing. Flexibility is key. That was a big thing for sure. Now more than ever, so we not only have had to adjust to a high recruiting via social media. I can't run a job fair. I can't run a walk-in. I'm all about, and have always been, If it is Mardi Gras, come in, get a job today, get a bead, get a kinkling, come and do, and like we can't do those things. So any of that in-person engagement, searching for a job is exhausting. Everybody knows that. It's exhausting. It's a lot of work. So anything that we can do to make that engagement and connection with the right people helpful is something that we've always wanted to do. But the adjustment has been a big thing in the social media side for sure. On the management side, I will tell you one of the hardest things has been educating our clients. So educating our customers that we are supporting in there's got to be some give and take. You know, I know that you're asking for this, but you need to allow the flexibility to work from home twice a week. You need to allow them to, instead of work at 8 to 5, work at 9 to 3, because that's what their daycare can cover. You need to, so there is a lot of education on that side with our clients that we really didn't have to do as much of before. Also financially, what's worth it financially for people to leave their house? The virus fear is a very real thing, as it should be. But it's one of those things that a lot of companies are having trouble to say, that's fine, work from home. But training somebody new remote is very hard to do. It's very hard to do. If anybody has had to hire new staff and has attempted to train remote, good for you. You are a successful business person, and that's a hard thing to do. So we really had to educate a lot of conversation of, okay, why don't you do in-office training 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week allow them to utilize that training that you just did and work from home and kind of move from there as well. I know there has also been, like I said, a lot of displacement as well, but working with what skill sets are transferable. A big industry that had a lot of displacement was the restaurant and service industries. People looking for administrative assistants, call center representatives, things like that, are often looking for somebody with a call center background and admin background. But if you can work retail or restaurant with the general public in a 10-year job, you can deal with anybody. So realistically, educating not only those people, those clients, as to how can this skill set help you and also help the community to get back on their feet and find the right people for that skill set, but also helping the candidates. We have a lot of virtual training we can do, Microsoft Word, typing, Excel, QuickBooks, things like that, to expand that skill set that somebody may not have.
Awesome. Yeah. So you kind of touched a little bit on how, training remotely is obviously, not ideal. I know a lot of people who are displaced job-wise, and that's been a major issue or a major hurdle for them in their new position, because most businesses have moved remotely. And the training, isn't always up to par remotely. It's not the same when you've got someone in front of you. So staying on kind of that remote subject, what have been some of the challenges you faced in managing your team remotely? What are some major differences in working in person as opposed to remote? Have you noticed any increased motivation, decreased motivation, freedom of flexibility? Any insight into that?
So we have actually not been really remote. I have been in the office since the first week of May 2020. We were out for like 4 weeks, end of March through April, and then we were back in the office. Now, what we do is so people-based. So it is what it is. But yes, there are some adjustments that we have made that instead of initially doing a face-to-face interview, I may do this first, or we may do more phone screens and then bring them in for face-to-face. Like I said, job fairs are not options, things like that we have had to kind of change. But working remote, training remote is not something that we have had to do. Since COVID started, we have trained and developed 4 new recruiters between our 5 offices since COVID started, and trained them in person. So that also takes a very particular person who's comfortable to do that, knowing that they're coming into a space that they are engaging every single day. We have had to make adjustments. We don't interview 50 people in a day. We interview 20 people in a day. They're more spread out throughout the day. We are in different office spaces versus in like what we like to call a bullpen, that like it's more of an open environment. So some of that changed as well. One of the biggest struggles that we have had is engagement with our clients who still are remote. Everybody's looking for work right now. Candidates are moving like wildfire. If you have a strong, capable candidate and there's work available for them, they're going like this. You can't respond to me a week and a half later and say, is JoJo still available to interview? Probably not. That's probably one of the biggest struggles that we have come across, is how quickly we can engage and communicate with people that are not necessarily in the office all day long working on what they're doing. They are remote. So that's probably one of the biggest struggles that we have had. My team is more engaged being here. It's harder to stay engaged outside of here. We are, for anybody who's met me before, I'm very high energy as a person. And that's something that my entire team is. So when a placement happens for somebody who, you know, we've been really excited about, or a new job order comes in, or a new client comes in, there's a lot of woohoo. I mean, just it just is. And that's something that our office needs to be able to kind of keep moving forward. Somebody had asked a question about work from home. Yes, we are seeing some clients with flexibility from working from home, but not from the get. Can we train you? And then once you're trained, can we move you to a hybrid model? Working from home initially is very hard. We had one client who came off the bat, new, we had not worked with them before. And they asked for like 25 call center people, all working remote. And then once COVID settled, then they would go back on site. They have really struggled to maintain employees because a lot of those employees did not realize how hard that training of a call center remote was going to be. So it's not as common, but it is definitely something that some clients are revisiting after training is done versus initially starting them work from home. Your technology also has to be up to par. Best suggestion I can give you for that is if you have kids at home or a spouse who also happens to be working from home, put them all online at the same time so you know what your capabilities actually are before you upgrade, change, whatever the case may be. Because you online, fine. 6 of you online, maybe not. It's a whole other ballgame.
Totally understandable. So I'm going to ask a question similar to what I asked Jasmine. In a post-pandemic world, obviously you guys have had to make some changes to your business model and how you manage your team and whatnot. Will you return to the systems and structures you used pre-pandemic? Will you hold what you guys have been doing, or maybe maintain a hybrid of both? What do you see for the future?
I think there'll be a hybrid, not only for us, but also for clients. Like I was just saying, allowing people to start to do that as they get into training and as they get through them as well. We have also already formulated a lot of plans once the weather is not what the groundhog said. Once we're in a better space with that situation, setting up pop-up tents and doing a job fair outside, doing things that allow us to still socially distance, have a little fresh air, but pick up our volume a little bit. With so many people looking for employment and so many companies looking for employees, we need to do the high volume interviewing that we used to do. That's something that we have to go back to. It's not going to be an option. Companies are going to be needing the people. But changing how we do those events is going to be a big thing. If anybody's been to a mass job fair at the News Post, at Fisk, at wherever it is, it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people. It's a lot of communicating and very close to each other. So anything we can do to kind of take that step back is a nice step for sure. We are 100% masked in the office. Everything is wiped down obnoxiously. We chase after Lysol wipes in the grocery store like they are fairies. But it is definitely something at the same time that we're going to have to pick up our volume. That's not going to be something that we can change. There's two different sides of our world, right? In the last 9 years that I've been here. So there is too many jobs, not enough candidates, too many candidates, not enough jobs. I would always rather be in the space that I have too many jobs and not enough candidates, because we will move you around. We will put you kind of in a better space. But candidates are also going to have to be flexible with how they're adjusting, because some people are going to be starting from scratch. Some people are going to be rerouting into a new industry, a new lane, a new situation. So there's really got to be flexibility on both sides as we continue to go into what the new structure may be.
Excellent. And, work aside, what would you say, what are you most looking forward to once things return to normal?
Normal. The new norm, nobody knows. So first and foremost, I love employee recognition. So being able to go out and pick your employee of the month and bring a gift and recognize them on the job. And a lot of clients have us on a pretty serious lockdown now, as far as you can come in, but it has to be scheduled this at this time with no other people around, et cetera, et cetera. So I do miss that 100%. that's something that I'm hoping kind of gets back to it. The other thing is to me, again, I've been here for since May, and I didn't go anywhere. For people to feel comfortable and happy at work again. I get it, work is work, but to a lot of us, your work in coworkers is also part family. You spend more time with these people or just as much time as you do with a lot of your actual family. So this is my team, this is my crew. And I know that if I wasn't here all the time, I would miss that camaraderie and that ability at work. Some people are just looking for the norm of work. If you are a people person, being cooped up working from home is a very, very hard thing. I thought I was going to go nuts in 4 weeks. So all of you have been doing this since March. You're a better human than I will ever be. So I applaud you for that. So I'm really looking forward to the ones who really need it, being able to kind of get back into that structure and that camaraderie of the success of your job as well as the struggles of your job. When you're working from home, you deal with both independently.
Totally understandable. I know in my industry, basically we rely on that face-to-face interaction to build connections and relationships with not only our clients, but possible future clients. And, just not being able to get out and connect with people has definitely been a blow, just to not even to just the business itself, but to morale. It's really nice to get out there and get that human to human interaction. But thank you very much, Molly. We appreciate you answering our questions.
You're welcome.
Everyone watching, if you're looking for maybe some employment, maybe Molly or her team member can help you out. So reach out to her. We'll move on to our next panelist, Mr. Chris Sparks, who is the owner and creator of local downtown escape room, Surelocked in Escape Games. Chris, how are you doing today? And give us a brief overview of Surelocked in.
Good to see you. Good to see you all, everybody, virtually. Good to be here. For those of you that haven't been to an escape room before, an escape room is a 3D game of Clue. You are put into a movie set style space, sometimes one room, sometimes multiple, and you and your team have to work together to solve the interlocking riddles and puzzles in 1 hour to escape. It's a ton of fun. It's a blast. And before the pandemic, escape rooms were the single hottest entertainment trend in the world that wasn't an app on a phone. So it is something we brought to Frederick 4 years ago, and we've been having a ball ever since.
Excellent. And obviously with an escape room, you've got a physical location. It's a little more unique, maybe harder to pivot. And as one of the business owners on the panel, customers have to come in to experience your product. What went through your mind as a business owner when all non-essential businesses were ordered to close last spring?
Well, as a confession, I had gone to college through the swine flu. I had been around for other pandemics, not as a business owner, but just as an American citizen. It wasn't until Governor Hogan ordered the Port of Baltimore to be closed that we realized how bad this thing was going to get for the business. We were shut down by governor's orders from March 19th through June 19th. And that's complete full stop. No one in the building, no guests, no ticket sales, nothing, not a zip. So for us, on the night of the 19th, we're sitting there going, on one hand, what are we going to do? Because all of a sudden our entire industry has been turned on its head. But on the other hand, we were thinking, you know what? I'm really glad that we were forced to close, because being mandated to close by the government allowed us to work out agreements with landlords and other entities to pause billing and pause payments on things like rent or expenditures in a way that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. We saw people asking for refunds for their rooms from the beginning of March up until the time that we were closed. So really the closure was a blessing in disguise.
Now, how were you able to pivot your services? What changes did you have to make to safely and successfully reopen? Did you have to modify any games, whether people touch certain objects or whatnot? How did you guys handle that?
Well, in the beginning, while we were closed, the big push in the escape room industry was, hey, make all of your games virtual. Make it so that someone can log on to a call like this. A game master will wear a GoPro or something like that and be in the room for you to experience the game. And we had to resist the urge to do that, because our rooms are a lot like a magician's show. Once you know what's going on behind the scenes, or if a video of our rooms are out there and online, the whole show is over. You would never need to come in again because you could just see it, and we would have, driven ourselves into the ground. So when we went to reopen, we thought, okay, what needs to happen for customers to be safe and to know that they are safe? We coveted and hoarded hand sanitizer like we were some sort of Tolkien dragon. We went and found anything we could just to bathe the rooms in as much cleaning product as we could. And even to this day, every single one of our interactive game masters is wearing at least one mask. We maintain social distancing at all times. We've erected plexiglass barriers at the check-in to make sure there's no accidental exchanges. And we go in literally by hand and clean every single thing that someone has touched. Every key, every lock, every prop, every item. We have to do that because the idea of someone getting sick when they should just be having fun is unacceptable.
I certainly would not like to get sick when I'm supposed to be having fun. That's for sure.
Right.
So obviously, as a business owner, you've got multiple employees on your team and the need to work in an enclosed environment. What steps did you take between your employees to mitigate COVID-19 risk? And did you have a process, or do you have a process to handle any exposure possibly within the workplace?
Yes. So what we had to do is before the pandemic, we were just about to hire 4 more staff members. That had to be put on pause, obviously, because we were now closed. And so when we reopened with the staff that we had pre-pandemic, we had to make sure that when we did the scheduling, we switched to a more appointment-only basis during our slow times so that people weren't just in a public space waiting for human interaction when they didn't have to be. Our rooms require a game master per attraction to operate. So we needed to have people physically on site. We could not switch to virtual. So what we had to do, in addition to the masks and the cleaning, was to make sure that we knew what risk factor each employee represented and paired them accordingly to mitigate any spread. So an example would be, we had some members of the staff who had immunocompromised folks that they were living with. For them, we had to make sure that they weren't on shift the same time as someone who might be attending physical classes or might be in a living situation where they were more prone to be exposed to multiple people. It was a puzzle in its own right to make sure that the schedule would still operate, but also keeping our people safe.
Those are great steps. You can definitely tell you take it to the next level and just kind of finding their own individual risk factors. Now, as a business owner, obviously you face the challenges with reopening and, in front of the scenes. So what were some of the challenges behind the scenes brought upon by COVID that you had to overcome, whether it was getting in line for PPP, et cetera? What would you say?
One of the multiple parts there, one of the biggest ones that I think we all can relate with is finding things like toilet paper or finding things like hand sanitizer in those early days. We don't know why people hoarded toilet paper in the ways that they did, but it makes it very hard to run a business where you have to provide those sort of things to customers. So we went from literal problems of finding the physical things we needed to maintain the business. A whole nother world of applying for PPP, grants and loans and making sure all those applications are in order, figuring out which ones that you qualify for. And then once you do it, making sure that everything's in a row as you apply and implement those things. There's so many rules and standards about double dipping into different funding sources to make sure that we could still keep the lights on. And then the biggest elephant in the room in terms of challenges behind the scenes just became, how do we convince people and show them that it is safe to escape? We adopted a mantra of that Surelocked is reopened for good, clean fun, literally. And it was a way of educating the public that you can leave your home and it's okay. It's going to be okay. You're going to have fun, you're going to be safe, and all you'll take home are memories. You're not going to walk away sick.
That's an excellent mantra. I noticed that, and I think it's a great one. I love it. So having the experience now of operating in a crisis, what would be some tips that you would share with other small businesses that would help them, A, prepare for something like this, and B, survive through something like this?
The number one tip that I would give to any business owner is to continue to be authentic. Stand by your product, stand by what you do, continue to operate at the highest possible level. What has saved us is that we had such a solid reputation going into the pandemic that as we, along with the rest of the world, started to puzzle our way through this, our reputation was able to hold us. So we communicated frequently with folks, releasing video content, posting things on our website and social media, just to explain where we were at and what we were doing. And as people saw how seriously we were taking this, they knew that it was safe to come back and see us when the time came. And when we reopened, it just became a matter of sticking by our guns. We've had adults throw temper tantrums for not wearing their masks in the rooms. And what we have told both our employees and the Frederick News Post is if you can't figure out why you need to wear a mask to keep people safe during a pandemic, there's not a prayer that you can solve the puzzles upstairs in the escape rooms.
That is an excellent response. So another question. So I know you guys have a segment where you might even go into a business to do some training or something like that. And that's another avenue of your guys' business. Have you found that that's decreased, completely halted? Have there been any opportunities for that?
There have been many opportunities for that, and they've been a lot of fun. It's a big pivot because prior to the pandemic, we were doing massive events. We did a partnership with the Civil War Museum last year during September, October of 2019, where we had 450 people come down as we turned all of Frederick into a Civil War escape room. In the pandemic, we couldn't do something like that because you can't have that many people together. So instead we pivoted to things like partnerships with the city and Celebrate Frederick to create scavenger hunts, week-long Great Frederick scavenger hunts, where people could compete by families or by households. So we still would have massive turnout, but it looked nothing like what we were used to. One of my favorite events that we did during the course of the pandemic, we did various virtual trivias, various online games. My number one favorite, though, was a partnership with Monocacy Brewing Company. We put on the Great Brew Dunnit, where we designed an escape room in a briefcase, and groups came to the bar, sat outside socially distanced, and solved an escape room entirely at their table while they enjoyed the beverages in a safe and distant manner. We ran the whole thing remotely. People would phone in to talk to the police officer who was running their case, and they had to call back once they had identified who done it. It was a blast and a model that we thoroughly enjoyed. We hope to bring it back as soon as possible once we have a better idea of how restrictions are going to change for drinking establishments and restaurants.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I wish I would have made that one. So obviously a lot of fun in the escape room industry. It's definitely an experience and builds a lot of memories. Any fun stories to share while you guys were operating in the pandemic in light of, the negatives?
The whole pandemic was a roller coaster, still is a roller coaster. One of my favorite memories of the last few months is when we were open normally. We would have people come to our escape rooms for big occasions. In particular, people like to pop the question as part of the game. And we would coordinate with folks in advance to hide the ring in the room so you would discover it as part of the game. And then the game would end with one of the people dropping down on one knee and surprising the other person. Obviously, when we were closed, we couldn't do that, but people still asked us. And we had one couple, they had been loyal customers, they'd been to our rooms before. And they said, well, what could you still do? And we created a totally not Harry Potter themed escape bag. It looked like something that you would have found on the way to a school of witchcraft and wizardry. Each part of the bag was a different puzzle that locked, it had its own keys, had its own way to open it. Until ultimately at the end, the player took a golden snitch out of one of the pockets of the bag, and it opened at the close to find the engagement ring inside. And so we got all these pictures of them playing our escape game in their backyard, just with their household, completely safe, with him down on one knee, truly making the bag magical. And it was giddy. They even, when they came back to safely drop off the bag, you could see them both glowing. And the idea that we could still give that to them, even though our building was locked, felt pretty good.
That's a wonderful idea. I mean, you say you make memories, but those memories will definitely last a lifetime. That's really incredible, Chris. And that's all the questions I've got for you, and really appreciate you being on here and answering them. Anybody watching, Surelocked in, please inquire about their hours and see if you can get in there, because they are a lot of fun. And as you might even get engaged there. Who knows?
That has a nice ring to it.
All righty. Our next panelist will be Kendall, Tiffany of Transit Services of Frederick County. Why don't you give us a brief overview of what you do there, your responsibilities, and how transit's been helping the community?
Hi, so I'm the communications manager for Transit. So I do all of the marketing, outreach, everything for our division. And then I also manage a rideshare program for Frederick County. So I work with commuters and local employers to implement alternative transportation, whether it be teleworking or flexible scheduling or finding carpool, vanpool options for people that are traveling in or out of the county. So yeah, it's a lot of different moving parts and pieces. And I'm also our division public information officer.
Wow, sounds like you got a couple of hats there. And I know a lot of people in the community rely on rideshare, carpool, vanpool to get down to their employers. Obviously, that entails close contact with others. So, as the coordinator of the Frederick County Rideshare Program, how has COVID impacted the program and your responsibilities with it?
So it's been extremely challenging, especially on the marketing piece, with trying to get people that are, essential personnel and whatnot that need to get to work. How do you pivot that message to show that riding with somebody who could be a complete stranger is, practicing safe COVID protocols? So a lot of marketing has actually pivoted towards telework programs. We actually work with a contractor to help implement formal telework programs at different employers in Frederick County. So I think with those kind of things in place, then it makes these types of transitions a lot easier. And the other thing that we've definitely been marketing is what we are doing at Transit to ensure that everybody is safe. We do transport a number of people that are essential personnel and or seniors that need medical appointments and whatnot. And so in order to ensure their safety, we've had a number of materials put out for that. So we are asking everybody on the large buses to load the bus at the rear door. So that actually helps protect the driver and customers. We are fare free. We've been fare free since last April. So that limits the contact of money transfer. And then we actually mandated masks on board in April last year, which we were one of the first transit agencies in the state to do that. Thankfully, we have not really had any issues with that. It's now a federal mandate that any transit system you're on, you need to wear a mask. And knock on wood, we really haven't had any, major breakouts or anything like that. We have extra staff that are cleaning the vehicles in between every run, asking people to social distance. And if we have a vehicle available, we were doing for a while what we call a chase bus. So if there was a certain number of people on the bus, we would call in the other bus to kind of follow that one so people could safely distance. So it's just, been marketing to show that those protocols are in place. For our Transit Plus program, it's been mainly, we're trying to keep the vehicles, as small as number of people as possible, especially since the senior population is at higher risk.
Do you guys have anything in particular or different options specifically for people who may be seniors or, compromised or have higher risk factors, to COVID?
So they, one of the things, they can actually work with our dispatch if that is something that is a big concern, and they can work through that with dispatch. We've actually seen a large decrease on Transit Plus just because a lot of seniors are not traveling like they were before, since the county does have a lot of programs in place to allow them to stay home safely. So whether it be Meals on Wheels or some kind of food delivery service, there's different groups within the hospital system that are, coming to people's homes to make sure that their medicines are in place and that kind of thing. So those that do need, say, dialysis, for example, they can work with the dispatcher to ensure that everything is safe for them.
That's awesome. A lot of accommodations being made. We'd love to see that from local government. And I know you mentioned communication in your overview. So, and it's something that I haven't really touched on yet in this panel. Obviously, the way we communicate with our coworkers and clients has changed a lot. So, as a branch of local government, how does communication look within your department on a day-to-day basis? Do you guys have a standardized app, or maybe Zoom or Slack or Teams or something like that? How have you guys handled that change?
So actually, so the county primarily at large is using Microsoft Teams. It was just something that was easy to integrate with all the other systems within the county. Other agencies I work with are using anything from GoToMeeting or Zoom. I would say I do like Teams because I can just click right from my Outlook calendar and it opens the meeting rather than, trying to open a bunch of different applications. But in terms of communication, I do. We were working from home a couple times a week prior to the pandemic, and that was actually because our building was supposed to go under construction last spring. So in order to allow people to have some quiet time and get work done, we were all supposed to be in portables, essentially in our bus lot. So we already had a formal telework program in place, which was an easy transition when everything took place. But now the admin staff is actually going to be home for another year until the building is finished. It did start construction last month. So I would say in terms of communications, we're primarily doing email and we do Teams. I do really miss just being able to go down the hallway and ask a quick question, especially on the operations side. They're all there in person and it's way easier to get, answers for them just going to them in person because they are always on the move. So trying to track them down with an email or phone call can be a little bit challenging.
Awesome. Yeah, that's communication's been a big factor for a lot of people, and I agree with you. I miss just being able to walk down the street or pop in somewhere and just say hello. And now it's not the best idea. So another topic I haven't really touched on much is with most schools and daycare services being shuttered upon the arrival of COVID, how has your organization adapted to meet the needs of employees in terms of flexibility for childcare? I know you said you guys have been working on a flexible schedule, but was there anything else that had been done to kind of increase that?
So my son will actually be 2 in May. Last May, we were planning to put him in daycare when he hit a year. And that was right in the peak of COVID stuff. So my husband's also a teacher, so he was then forced to teach remotely. So we decided to kind of work out a schedule based on that. And then once things got a little bit better, the grandmothers help out as well. So my supervisor also has 3 young kids. So he understands. His wife is also a teacher. So we just kind of had that open communication. A lot of times I'll schedule like more easy not telework, like Zoom webinars kind of thing in the morning. That's something I can just easily listen to while keeping an eye on him. And then during nap time is when I really tried to get as much stuff done. And based on my husband's schedule to date, he's been able to basically do the afternoon since his day is finished a lot sooner than mine. So it's been a little bit of a challenge. I usually try to get up and answer a bunch of emails before he gets up, and then the morning's a little bit of a toss up depending on the day, and then usually like mid-morning till the end of the day, I'm okay to catch up and do everything.
So obviously balancing working remotely and being a parent is quite the juggling event. So what would you say the biggest challenge in that is? Is it just finding the time to build a schedule with your husband?
I would say the biggest challenge, honestly, is separating home and work life. I have the mom guilt of when I'm on my computer or my phone and not paying attention to him. And then I also have the okay, it's 6, 7 o'clock at night, and I can still check my email or answer things on my phone. Whereas prior, I would leave work at 5 o'clock and I wouldn't really check any of that stuff. So, and be full attentive to my family. So I would say that's the biggest struggle is, that balance of when you draw the line and what is what throughout the week.
Awesome. Yeah, that really leads me into my next question. What are some tips and tricks to working from home that you found to be helpful, especially as a parent?
Routine, I would say, is key. Children are very routine based. And I personally am also very routine based. So if I start to kind of, get away from not getting up as early or things like that, it seems to kind of send the day into a spiral. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a little bit more chaotic than it would be if, we had a normal schedule. So, that would probably be my biggest thing. The other thing I found is on like Sundays, for example, chat with your spouse or whoever else is in your home about your schedule and when it is needed for each of you to work. So that's primarily when we, schedule the grandmothers for the next week and go from there. So that's probably the biggest tip I would say is, keeping a routine, act like you're still going to an office, even though you're not. If meal prepping is something that is beneficial for you, I would definitely recommend doing that. I'm a little burned out on cooking 3-4 meals a day, especially because my son sometimes eats different times. So having things that are easy to grab is certainly helpful.
Well, excellent, and thank you for sharing. And I guess a similar question I've asked everyone here. So, what are some positives that you've taken out of the pandemic? What are the silver linings you would say?
Silver linings is I never would have gotten this extra time with my son. I went back to work 3 months after he was born, and my job is normally very intensive with events and that kind of thing. So a lot of times, especially in the spring and the fall, I would be working later at night or on the weekends based on when community events fall. So it has been nice that I've been with him to see different progressions and whatnot that I wouldn't have seen before.
Excellent. I can definitely understand that. And thank you very much for sharing, Molly or Kendall. I'm sorry. And that's all the questions that I really got for you. I mean,
yeah, and I would say if anybody else is in the same position, definitely communicate with your supervisor as to what your situation is. I think they can work out a schedule with you, whether it be you start working at 6 a.m., take a break in the morning when you're helping your kids virtually with school or whatnot, and then go from there. So communication is key.
excellent, understandable. And if there's anyone out there, if you'd like to ask any of our panelists any questions, feel free to send a chat. Chris, you got something there?
Yeah, well, it looks like we do have a question down there. Lainey says, thanks for sharing, everyone. Following up on Kendall's point, does anyone have any tricks to step away from work when working from home? Anybody have a slam dunk for that one?
I've been trying to, so I have a work phone and a county phone, which is a little bit challenging. I know my husband purposely deleted his work email from his cell phone, so he doesn't check it when he's done for the school day. That if you have teacher friends or family members, that sometimes the parent email that comes in at 8 o'clock at night can totally ruin your day. So that's something that he's done. I unfortunately have a separate county phone, and my desk phone unfortunately forwards to that phone. So if it's a number that's coming through the county, I need to answer it. So that's something that kind of sucks. But I've been trying to just, at 5 o'clock or whatever, we plan to go for a walk with the dog and that kind of thing. So just something that's like a hard deadline of, okay, this is what we need to do now. I would say is certainly helpful.
I'd actually like to piggyback on that walk thing. I call it walking my commute. So normally the time that I would have spent after work commuting home, letting those lingering work thoughts sort of go away while I'm driving home, I kind of do with my walk. So it's sort of my commute. So yeah, as I shut down, whenever I'm able, and just, even if it's just a 5-minute walk around the block, sometimes just that change of scenery and that change of pace can really help you transition. All right, this is from work to now this is my me time. So, yeah.
Just another thing on top of that, I think that now more than ever, a lot of people who are working virtually or working remote, a lot of employers are, well, you can respond to it, it's just an email. Like, it's not, there's almost an expectation of being able to respond to something later, or understanding that. Really, if your job is something that requires that, setting a line for yourself of what can wait until tomorrow versus what has to be responded to today. I struggle with that significantly. I don't currently have any kids, so in my brain, it's like, it's fine, I'll do it. Stop doing it. You need to set that boundary for yourself. You need to set that line. But sometimes when we're now so used to the digital side of it, it becomes too easy to respond at any time of the day or the night. I know a lot of people now get up and before they're even out of bed, scroll through their emails on their phone, delete, before they're even out of bed. And it's like, give yourself a chance, like, before you jump into it. So setting your boundaries, kind of knowing your lines as to what's urgent and what can wait, because not everything can wait. I get it, especially, I mean, we have companies that run 24 hours, so not everything can wait. I'm sure on the transit side, you get a lot of that as well. But a lot of things can, most things can.
That's definitely been something I've been guilty of, is, roll out of bed. First thing I do is check my email before I go to bed, check my email. And, it's necessary. And you're right, some things can wait. And I think I personally need to do a little better at that. Let's see if we've got any more questions. Anybody, any takers?
And something I would say, on that communication point, if you are, I know, especially with winter weather that transit's experiencing, we have had to communicate outside of our traditional work hours. But if you are working more during certain times, it might be a good conversation to have with your supervisor about becoming, like, county has non-essential personnel and essential personnel. So if there is a weather emergency, essential personnel is actually paid in a different format. So if you're finding yourself working on, off hours, that kind of thing, more essential, it might be a good conversation to have with your supervisor and or HR about changing how your job is recognized. So 2 of our admin staff has actually now become essential because they have found themselves working even if the county's closed or we're not running service. So that's just something to consider if you are working later at night or earlier in the morning, or adjusting your work hours so you're not working 15-hour days or whatever it might be.
Just on Kendall's point, from somebody who does a lot of work with HR managers, now more than ever, please do not be afraid to have a conversation with them if there needs to be an adjustment. Now is the time that they're truly having those conversations. I have a sister who had a kid in August, and because it works with their daycare, they both used to work 8 to 5. She now works 6 to 2. He works 9 to 6. Somebody drops off, somebody picks up, but all you had to do was ask, and it worked. As long as you're getting your work done, they honestly most of the time don't care.
Definitely great advice. And Molly, I've actually got another question for you on the recruiting side of things. So if someone were to be, actively looking for employment and working through a recruiter, what are some things that they can do to kind of, make their odds a little better, or at least try to streamline the process a little bit?
Such a good question. So couple things there. Flexibility is key, right? So it now more than ever, your dream job is probably not waiting for you to walk into right now. I'm not saying sacrifice what you want, but there has to be some conversation about what you can grow into and what I need now and how to kind of get moving and get working. Also, expansion of skills. I have worked with a lot of people who have said, like I had said before, moving from different industries, trying to make the change. I have in the last 6 months interviewed more teachers trying to get out of education than I have ever interviewed before. That is a hard transition, but there has to be a real conversation as to what do you need versus what do you want. So in recruiting, applying for everything that may check off 6 of the 10 boxes. Another big thing when looking for work and applying for work and making yourself attractive, a lot of people read a checklist in a job posting and they don't apply for it because they don't check every box. Stop doing that. If you check off 60% of that job posting, you're probably worth applying for it. If you're making a career change, if you're making a big jump, cover letters or a strong objective or something on your resume is key. The national average that an HR professional looks at a resume is 7 seconds. If you have not caught their attention in 7 seconds, they have already discarded your resume. We have somebody who's worked for our team at this point for 11 years, and the owner of our company discarded his resume 3 times because the information that she needed was halfway down his resume on the first page. I know that sounds crazy, but it's definitely one of those things that if you are going to apply for something, making yourself attracted to that job. Also, don't use the same resume for every job that you apply for. Okay, not every job is the same. You should be adjusting your resume. All too often we just like save, or it's like attached to Indeed and you do easy apply or you do whatever the case may be. But an administrative specialist and a customer service manager are 2 very different positions. The skill set is different. The selling points of your skill set are different. Please change your resume. It may be a formatting change. It may be how you move it from a functional resume to a timeline resume. I mean, those are different things that I would really suggest for you. Stay engaged with the jobs that you're applying for. I use reference to people all the time. People of our generation will very much so get this. In Legally Blonde, when she submits her resume for that internship, she turns her resume in on a pink piece of paper and it's scented, right? So there's just something about making yourself stand out a little bit more. I give people the suggestion when they hand a resume in at a job fair, put it on cardstock. Put it on something that just makes it a little bit different outside of what everybody else is. That being said, in this digital world right now, be the person who calls the company 3 to 5 days after you submitted. Hi, my name is Molly Fraley. I just want to make sure that you receive my resume through the portal. Don't call every job if you apply for 100 jobs a week. Pick the ones that you're really looking to go for, that are prime on that list, and be the person who stands out. Most people do not call and follow up to make sure their resume made it through that digital craze of online applying. Most people do not. So being the person who sticks out is a big seller. Use your connections. Referrals are life. I have companies right now that are paying $250, $500 a person if they refer somebody to a company. If you have connections somewhere, they're gonna go to somebody who referred a reliable employee before they go to their online portal. If I've been at a company for 8, 5, 10, 2 years, why would I apply or refer somebody who's gonna be a bad employee? You're not going to. Use your connections, talk to your friends. Are there companies hiring? That's a huge thing right now because companies are paying buco bucks to people that are referring strong employees.
Wow, great to know. And that was very, very valuable information. Thank you for that, Molly. Does any of our viewers have any other questions? Drop them in the chat. We've got a couple more minutes here that we'll be answering any questions that you may have. And I guess until some of those questions come in, if they do come in, let's say, for example, you work with Molly, you do get hired. Next thing you know, you're going to have trouble getting to your new job. So what would it look like getting involved and how would someone pursue the Frederick County rideshare program if they needed to get to their new place of employment, Kendall?
So we have a variety of options that we can work with. There are, if it's local to Frederick, we could work either through transit options or there is actually a large regional rideshare database through the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. So it covers all of Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and parts of Delaware, and the district. So essentially you just put in your work hours and your work commute, and we can run what's called a match list for you. So that will help pair you up with people who are do the same commute that you do. And I know a lot of people worry and say, well, what if I get sick, or what if my kids get sick? What if I have to work late? How does that work with my carpool, or if a van pool might be a better option? Same with this also applies if you use MARC train or commuter bus. There's a program called Guaranteed Ride Home. So if you use an alternative form of transportation at least twice a week, so as long as you're not driving by yourself at least twice a week, you get up to 4 free rides home a year. And the year starts from whenever you sign up. So if you have to work late one day and your van pool or carpool has to leave early, essentially all you do is you would call a phone number once you're set up, and they will dispatch a cab or Uber or Lyft to your office and take you back to your home or your car, whatever is closer. The same applies if you get sick in the middle of the day and need to get home and services aren't running yet. So that is an option, and what we found in the entire region. So, it's a large number of people in there. People don't even use the 4 that they get to in a year. So it's what we like to call a commuter insurance policy. So you don't have to worry if you are using an alternative.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Kendall. And it looks like, we haven't had very many questions, so we'll get ready to wrap this up. Just wanted to thank everybody for attending part 1 of our series we're putting together. The next one will be March 31st from 9:30 to 10:30. The topic will be how to go from surviving to thriving, a Generation Connect workshop facilitated by Debbie Neely. In that session, we will review tips for being a more resilient person, explore what we mean by recovery, and brainstorm how to build it into your day. Consider boundaries that might be needed and how to set them, and identify thinking traps and how to get out of one if you fall in one. So like I said, please join us March 31st from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. And thank you for having us today.
Alex, I just want to make a quick note. You had asked me about looking at the calendar, something about your resume, somebody for the recruiting side. If you've had a big break in your resume because you've been a stay-at-home mom or a parent, or because of whatever reason, we have a lot of companies that are second chance companies that are open to people who have charges in their background and things like that. Volunteer, get something on your resume. We have a lot of companies who reach out to us and said, okay, so they've been out of work for 4 years and they've just been hanging. There are a lot of things that make your resume attractive that are not jobs. So if you can get yourself involved in any sort of volunteer, things like that, it shows your community engagement. Depending on what the volunteer opportunity does, there's other skills that come through that as well. Please, 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 there are so many organizations in Frederick. Fill that hole in your resume with volunteer work. If you have been a stay-at-home mom, but you're a PTA president, there is a whole bunch of work involved in that. Please put that on your resume. So just things like that. Just wanted to kind of make sure that I added that in there, thinking about our whole panel and opportunities available.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Molly. And then I guess that wraps it up for today, guys. Like I said, thank you everyone for being here, and thank you for your time. And I hope everyone has a wonderful Wednesday. Take care, everyone.